Mr. Ric Ptak. How are you?
Tom, how you doing? I'm doing great.
Good. I'm
glad to be here.
Glad to hear it. I'm glad you're back. We've got a juicy one today. Yeah. I know you've been on the show quite a few times. A lot. You even took part in the time management training we did the other day.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you pick up any tips from that?
Well, the biggest one was you can't manage time, but you can manage priorities. So basically, look what you have to do, your priorities, and then triage the stuff that you can't do today or isn't the biggest priority, and just focus on those 2 or 3 things that are the largest priority.
Yeah, love it. Wow, you take good notes, Ric. You might have to remind me of those things sometimes. For those of you that don't know, Ric and I work together a lot. Ric is our resident cabinet maker, foreman, continuous improvement expert, and all things making wood go through the shop efficiently. Hey, Ric, for people who don't know who the heck you are, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to this group?
Well, cabinet maker by trade for 40 years now, and lots of experience with foreman, supervisor, leadership, mentoring, coaching, training folks on the floor, in construction, on the job site as well, installations and so on. So yeah, lots of experience there and lots of hands-on stuff with lean training, continuous improvement. And yeah, so it's just, I guess that's what people are looking for. That's what they're needing, especially now in these days where we've got reduced labor forces and we've got tight time frames, and we've got to do more with less, right? So that's what it's all about. Take what you have, the existing folks, and train them properly so that they're more efficient, got better flow, less walking. Let's look for the waste, reduce those wastes. Yeah, that's what what we're trying to do.
In your experience of doing this, and you've got just as much gray. You've got the woodworker's beard. I don't have that.
Yeah, well, that's a rite of passage, I guess, right?
Yeah. Got to have somewhere to hold the sawdust.
Exactly.
In your experience, though, in working with wood shops all around the world, are most foremen, is there foreman training, or is that a common thing, or is it usually, hey, you do a good job on the floor, you've got the right attitude, let's make you a foreman?
Well, that's how I think most of the time how it happens, in my experience, and folks that I've been dealing with. They're a good assembler, a good journey person, a good tradesperson.
Yeah. And
then they're asked to step into the leadership role, or foremanship role, or management role, right? So, and then there's very little experience that goes along with that unless they have a really good coach or mentor who knows how to be a great leader and knows how to be a great supervisor, to teach them those finer points and give them tools in the tool belt. Otherwise, you learn by the school of hard knocks, which is the way I learned, because now you've got to deal with people problems. You've got equipment problems. You've got supplier issues. You've got material issues. You've got a lot of stuff that interacts with everything that you have to do.
It's not just the tools.
And you have to try to solve those things in a way that you can keep the peace, and you can keep management happy, and ownership happy, and the clients happy, and the workers happy. So, it's a fine line, and sometimes it can be very demanding and very frustrating.
Yeah, I'll bet it. So today we're actually going to be talking about that very thing, because you run the foreman training. It's called Foreman/Supervisor 101. And we just ran the first one in the spring. And so
we ran one a year ago, or close to a year ago, and then we ran another one this spring, right? So I think there's more interest now coming on board.
Oh my goodness! Now. I think I was mentioning to you the other day, we've already got a couple of people who've asked to be put on a wait list. So now we have a wait list. We didn't even have one before until I got the request. Yeah. But what's the purpose of today's meeting? Because you and I are going to be, let me let you finish. I will allow you to answer the question I just asked is, Ric, what's the purpose of today's interview?
Yeah. Well, today I think we're just following up with one of these firms, and we won't mention names, but it was a firm, a woodworking firm, and they took part in the leadership foreman training. And one of the tasks that I gave them, one of the homework assignments, and it's one of the main ones, is you have to go and take some video footage of a bottleneck process within your facility, take about 15 minutes of footage, and then send it back to me, and I'll look at it and I'll see, I'll give it my eye. I'll put my keen eye on it, and I'll give some recommendations of what I saw and some things, maybe some opportunities for improvement, and point out some of the wastes. And then from that, they can use that same tool and then take video of another area of their facility and say, okay, let's look for the same things that Rick pointed out in the first one, and let's see if we can make some improvements. So it's another tool in the tool belt for supervisors, ownership managers, to kind of say, okay, let's look at the processes.
Yeah.
Because it's always about the processes. It's not, well, the people aren't working fast enough, or they're walking too slow. It's not about that, because a lot of times I'll look at the cabinet, or I'll look at the components, and they'll be sitting there and nothing is happening with them. And there's a reason for that. We ask the question, well, why is it not advancing? Why isn't the work advancing? Because guess what? Work in progress, that isn't moving, it is not having value added to it, it's costing money, because the client is waiting for that piece of furniture.
It's taking up real estate in our shop too.
And it's not moving, it's not flowing. So that means you're not producing and moving it forward. So that means you won't invoice it. When you want to, you're going to invoice it later. And sometimes that's a delay, or, it doesn't work with your schedule. So
you've got my mind going in a million directions here.
How do we shrink lead times? Yeah.
Yeah. You got my mind going in a million directions on the cash implications of slow production, but that's just me talking like a business coaching geek. And I want to reiterate one of the things you just said there, which is why I interrupted you. Sorry. The training you do is about reality, not theory. So this take a video of 15 minutes of your production is reality. Because, it's easy as a trainer to say, well, in general, these are the situations we encounter, and this is the 6 model method for overcoming it. Well, that has its place, but I'll tell you, the rubber hits the road when you get to see somebody's shop, or you get to, the interaction people have on the training calls is actually really good too, because they sometimes start to give suggestions to each other. But I really like that component where you say, send us that little bit of video on top of all of the training that we're doing over the weeks that the course runs. And then you give private comments on that.
Yeah. Well, it has to be real life stuff, because the worst thing in the world is, you have somebody come in and provide some training to folks, and you leave them with a bunch of reference material. And then that reference material sits on a shelf for 6 months. So you go back 6 months, 9 months later, you say, hey, how are you making out with the stuff that we taught you? Oh, this binder's sitting up here in the shelf, to pull it down, and it's got all kinds of dust on it. So, then you haven't really implemented. You haven't you have no intent to use the knowledge there. So if we can look at your real life situation, and then give us some problems of what you're currently dealing with, and let's see if we can apply some of the tools that you were taught over the 6 weeks on the foreman training. Can we apply that, and can we make some improvements? Can we reduce some of the waste or eliminate some of the waste, so that we can, add value and decrease lead times, and then, open your schedule up for more jobs, increase your sales, all the things you talk about, right?
All the things we talk about.
Yeah.
So let's give some context here. Let's paint a picture for people, because they're listening as an audio. Some are watching this on YouTube as a video, or listening in the background. But paint a picture of this shop, obviously with confidentiality in mind. Face frames. Are they doing furniture? Are they doing, what kind of cabinet maker are they?
Yeah. Well, they build cabinets and they're face frame, mostly residential. They pick up sometimes the odd commercial job, but it's mostly residential, but it's face frame cabinets because of the region where they're in. That's the market. That's what the customer wants. It's face frame, it's closet shelving and vanities and kitchens and all that kind of stuff.
I have a question. Those of you watching the video, see, I put my hand up when instructor Rick is talking. If I don't build face frames in my market, is the rest of this episode useless?
Well, no, because when we think about manufacturing, it doesn't matter what you build. You've got processes,
right?
And you've got things that you have to do to parts and pieces of equipment have to, interact with the materials. and you're advancing work through the facility with the goal is that you finish it and you can ship it and you can bill it. So this is what I look at when I am looking at things. Now, because I'm a cabinet maker, I can look at the woodworking part of it, but I would just as likely look at things that if I'm not a woodworker and I'm in a factory that builds, steel equipment or motor, or they produce glass and windows and
food. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We look at the process steps.
Yeah.
And when the part or the process isn't advancing, the work cell isn't advancing work out of there, then we ask the question, well, what's going on? Why? Somebody's waiting for something, waiting for information, waiting for a piece of equipment, waiting for parts. And then we say, oh, then they're walking away from the work cell because they're looking for something, or they don't have the equipment there, they don't have their parts there. So I look at it from that point of view. And I don't look at it so much, well, the person's walking too slow or they're not working fast enough, because making continuous improvement and lean changes and increasing flow doesn't mean you work faster or harder. It just means you're working smarter. You're working,
right.
You're not making as many movements, and you're getting more done without working faster, right? Yeah. Without causing more stress, because that's what we don't want.
I've noticed when I go on tours of shops and facilities, what you see is that high output shops, actually, it kind of looks like nothing's going on. People are just moving about the station to station, product is going, but there's really nobody's hair is on fire, right? It just, things are moving. Anyways, I wanted to bring that up because people have different styles of manufacture. Some people listening to this make pool tables. Heck, I know we've got at least 2 people that do outdoor log play furniture. But the reason I asked that question is because this continuous improvement and these observations that you're going to bring us from this particular shop just have to do with the manufacturing process. So it doesn't matter what you make. It's about how to make your processes faster, stronger, better.
Yeah. And you can apply the same logic to service companies, administrative, if you're providing a service. Or
you can apply it to the office.
You can apply the same tools.
Yeah.
Because you're still moving things through, whether it's, you're doing something on the software and you're advancing it through on the software, you're advancing, paper and forms and so on. It doesn't matter. You can apply the same tools.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. What were so you've given us some context. It's a residential cabinet maker. They're doing kitchens most of the time. Yeah. Take us through it.
Yeah, so they sent me video in their assembly area where they put their boxes together, and it just so happens that their boxes, they're not modular. So when they have let's say they'll have an 8-foot long vanity, they might have 3, they'll make it as one cabinet with 3 openings, 32 inches, let's say, and there's a face framer in front of there, and then in those 32, each of those 32-inch openings, there might be a bank of 3 drawers. So that would be a 9-drawer cabinet, and that would be one unit. That's the way that these folks make it,
Sure.
And I was asked by the owner, he said, well, maybe you might want to look at our cabinets. Are they too complicated? And I said, well, they might be. I don't know, but let's not go there yet. Let's just see what is happening on the floor currently. So they sent me a 17-minute long video. And it was showing 4 workbenches, but I kind of focused on kind of 2 of them because there was one way off in the distance and the one was one further back, and I just focused on 2 of them. So, I watched this video, and one of the workbenches, the individual was sanding the face frame. The face frame was already applied to a cabinet, and it was probably around a 72-inch long cabinet. Looked like there were 2 areas where there were drawers. So it was a 36 and a 36 put together to give the 6 feet. And so he had flipped the cabinet on his bench, on its back, face frame up, and he had a palm sander. He was sanding that. And then after that was done, then within that 17 minutes, he flipped it up and he started putting drawer slides in. Now, it also is good to know that these cabinets are unfinished. A lot of times they'll send cabinets to the job site, and then they'll be painted on site when they're installed.
And that's a regional thing, right? That's a regional
thing. Yeah. Now they have a few clients where they are finishing in the shop. They've just started that recently. But for the brunt of their work, they're sending them out unfinished, but send.
Sure.
So anyway, and then after the face frame was sanded, he flips it up and then he puts some drawer slides in, and that's basically the 17 minutes. And so if we just look at this one then in more detail, even, it took him, I think it was 7 minutes. Just let me check my notes here. 6 minutes. Oh, yeah, it took him 6 minutes to sand the face frame. So he had a pneumatic palm sander.
Right.
It took him 6 minutes to sand the face frame. So I asked, is that the correct amount of time? It seems to me like it's probably took longer than it should have. Right. So I'm asking the question, is it really the right amount of time? If that's what you're allowing, or is there a better way to do it? Is the process wrong? Because again, it's not the guy's slow. It's like, maybe that's the way he has to sand it, and it takes him 6 minutes, right? So it could be because of grits, or the way he gets the face frame, it hasn't been sanded, or it's all rough and he's got to final sand it. I don't know. So that was one of the questions. But then the bigger one for me was when he flipped it up, he mounted the slides in, and for those of you who are listening in, of course, you understand that the slides have to be mounted when the cabinet is assembled. So these slides were not mounted while the components were flat.
Right.
They pre-drill on their CNC. They pre-drill the holes, pilot holes for the screws for the drawer slides. So you know where to mount the slides, and that's all pre-drilled.
Sure.
But you still have to, monkey around by holding the slide up in there,
get your wrist in there, and
putting the back screw, and then you let the slide go. The front falls down. You get the next screw, you pick it up, and you put it in, and you put the center one in. So there's 3 screws per slide. And so it took him the remaining 9 minutes of the video to do 3 pairs of slides. And so I'm saying, okay, to finish that cabinet, because remember, there's 6
9,
drawers.
right? Yeah.
Right.
6
so
or 9.
Pair.
Okay.
It would take him 18 minutes. So imagine 18 minutes to put in 6 pair of drawer slides. And I said, something's wrong here. I said, I went down in my own shop. I've got a little shop myself. And I said, okay, I just want to time myself, but I'm going to time myself when the component is flat.
Right. So
I was able to do, not breaking a sweat, not trying very fast. I was able to do 3 pair in 4 minutes, as opposed to 9 minutes on what I saw in the video from the company. So less than half the time.
Yeah.
Just for fun, I said, if I was really moving, was really trying to do production here, I was able to do it in 3 minutes. But, I'm, for the benefit of the doubt, let's do it conservative.
You're just moseying along. Yeah. So let me understand this for a sec, Rick. Let me understand this. You have an efficiency lab set up downstairs where you go and you'll try to recreate the situation?
Well, I was more curious than anything. I said,
yeah, I mean, you need data, right?
Too long, but I said, I want to know from intelligently, I want to be able to say, this is how long it should take. If you've got all your components there, you've got your slides there, you've got your screws there, your drill, all your ends and dividers that need drawer slides mounted. If everything is there, you can take 4 minutes to put 3 pair in, or 8 minutes to put 6 pair of slides in. That's what it should take you.
So that's quite a savings on time. I mean, it's not half, but it's almost half the amount of time.
Well, it's better than half, right?
I thought it was 4 versus 9. Oh, yeah, there's my math. 18
minutes for 6 pair of this company, off the video, versus 8 minutes per se. It should only take 8 minutes.
Right.
So they're saving 10 minutes for every 6 pair of slides, right? So when you think about it in terms of, if this is happening every day, and you've got 3 or 4 guys
at every station, in little places along the way,
And what does that mean over the course of a year? Well, let's just think about that for a second. And I painted this scenario. I said, the current method of them doing the slides, which takes them 18 minutes for 6 pair.
Right.
Let's say they're doing 2 kitchens a week, and each kitchen has 8 drawers. So that's 16 pairs of slides per week. And in 1 year, that's 832 pair. So using their time, that takes 250 hours of mounting time.
250 hours just by doing 2 kitchens a week.
2 kitchens a week.
Right.
Keeping that time of what they were using, 18 minutes for 6 pair.
Okay.
Now, if they would be able to change their process just slightly and say, from here on in, we are not going to allow anybody to screw slides in on an assembled cabinet. We're going to create a station before we put the cabinet boxes together in the case clamp or however they're assembling it. And we're going to mount all those slides when the components are flat.
Not flat. Yeah.
Then that same scenario, using the 2 kitchens a week, I can mount them, those 832 slides, in 56 hours. Hold on. Mounting 832 slides, it's done in 56 hours versus 250 hours.
That's insane. So from 2, and this is one station. We're just talking about the application of the slides. That's
just talking about mounting slides.
Mounting slides. So from 250 hours for that work unit component down to 56 hours?
Yeah. That's if they do 2 kitchens a week.
Louise.
If they do 4 kitchens a week, then it's 500 hours versus 112 hours. So, I mean, you can do the math however you want. There's savings to be had here.
Well, there's 200 hours of labor saving. And if a regular guy is, let's just say that his burdened rate, so let's just say his total wage, including burden, is $25 an hour. I'm going to do this on my calculator just because I want to make sure that for those of you watching the screen, so 200 hours times $25 an hour, that's $5,000 the owner's going to save on this station by changing this station. I don't know how many stations he's got. You said you could see 3.
Well, I could see 4.
You could see 4 there.
Stations.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, the other thing to think about too is you have to be adding value all the time when you're manufacturing or providing a service or whatever
I was going to say, are you holding yourself to that standard? Because you just found 200 hours in one station. Yeah.
I mean, the customer is only going to pay for when you're adding value to something.
Right. So
when you're doing non-value added work, the customer is not willing to pay for that. And what I mean by that is value adding work means it has to change the form, fit, or function. So if I am filing or sanding or applying adhesive, right, or I'm cutting, or
sending plans to the CNC,
right? Then I'm adding value. But if I am walking around, if I'm waiting,
that's what I meant. If you're not doing actual touching the material,
if I'm cutting, well, if the part is sitting on the bench for 3 hours while we wait for materials or information or the piece of equipment or a person to come and work on it, there's no value being added, but the owner or the company has paid or will have to pay very shortly for that material, right, to the supplier.
Yeah. So
they have to pay for the supplier for the material, but they're not able to advance it out of their shop quick enough so they can get it to the customer so they can bill it, because that's what we're talking about here, right? So if we're doing something and we're not adding value, so if the worker is walking around looking for something, or it takes them twice as long to put slides in than it should, because you're only pricing it so it should only take 4 minutes for 3 pair, but it's taking him 18 minutes or 9 minutes for 3 pair. I mean, then you're paying the worker for that, but you cannot charge the customer. You can't call the customer and say, you know what, I only priced this job and I said my guys should be mounting those slides in 8 minutes for 6 pair, but it's taking them 18 minutes. So I have to bill you that extra 10 minutes for all your components. How many times we have those many components in your
the last time you're working
project.
For that builder,
and the customer is going to tell you to go pound sand.
Yeah,
because they're not paying for stuff that is not getting value added to. They're only interested in paying for the value added component. So then the owners have to say, so our opportunity here to improve is to look at the non-value added side of things, not to get a faster sander, not to get a faster saw, not to get a faster drill that can drill the screws in quicker, or a faster CNC router, because that's a smaller portion where you can make improvements. You really have to look at your process steps. How can I, minimize the walking and the waiting time between the process steps and make things flow efficiently, right? That's your bigger opportunity as a business person to say, how can we eliminate or reduce some of these wastes?
Let me get in the mind of the shop owner right now, because there's people listening. I mean, everybody listening is a shop owner. So I'm going to try and let me know if I get this wrong. Hey, Rick, I can see the opportunity, but my foreman's not bought in on improvement. All I get is excuses. All I get is reasons why that ain't going to work. In this particular case, it sounds like your suggestion is start to apply the slides when the item is flat. So let's just say the resistance comes from the foreman or the supervisor, or just the floor in general. How do you overcome that as an owner? And by the way, folks, if I got that sentence wrong, if that's not what you're hearing, shoot me a message and we can talk about it. But let's say that happens. Rick, what do? You're an owner who wants to make changes. There's resistance from the floor.
Well, I think it's really important for the owners and the managers to really cultivate and cultivate that culture within their facility, so that the leadership, the supervisors, the foremen really understand the stresses out there, the risks that the owners are taking, and the risks that they have to manage while they're working on projects. So I always had the discussion with when I was plant manager. I always talk to the supervisors and say, look, you've got to think as if you have to pay for it with your own wallet, right? So if you were paying for this out of your own wallet, would you allow this to happen, right? It's the same discussion we have with quality. Sometimes things come off the benches and off the processes, and the folks, they passed off bad quality. And I always go to them and say, if you were buying this, you were paying good money for this, would you accept this in your own home? And they said, no. I said, well, why would you pass it off to somebody else then? If you're not going to accept it yourself, well, why are you doing that? Let's fix it. Let's fix what bugs us. Let's, whatever it takes, let's raise the quality. And here's the same discussion. If we are, if the owners are paying money to the workers, but we're not adding value, and it's costing profits, and it's costing projects, because maybe we have to bid higher now because we've got these inefficiencies built in. We know that, so we have to price it higher so we can make some money. But maybe you don't get the job. Maybe your competition is getting those jobs because they're bidding efficient. And this was always the argument when we talked with the commercial woodworkers. Right. And they would lose the bid to their competition. Say, well, how come ABC, he's always underbidding. He's going to go broke in a couple of months. And
he never does. 7 years,
said,
12 years later.
He's doing something right. Maybe we could learn from him, right? Maybe he's doing it more efficiently and he can charge less.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
this is the thing.
Inside the frustration that I hear, and I know you hear this as well, inside the frustration you hear from leaders, business owners who want to make the changes, but there's a disconnect between the floor caring enough, is I think the solution of the course that we run, Foreman 101, right? It's how to be a foreman. Unless we train our people, you talked about culture, unless we have a culture of training, for people out there who've worked with me before, we talk a lot about tracking your numbers. And the reason we track the numbers is to be the kind of company that tracks numbers. Like when you're the kind of company that counts things get counted and those reports come up. If you're the kind of company that trains your people tend to get better. They get more educated. But if we don't train them and they stay, it's a bit of purgatory. It's always a dark and rainy day.
I would rather train somebody and they leave than I don't train them and they stay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's what I love that saying. It's true. So that I know that the training you provide sometimes is it's that tipping point to open up the conversation. And then of course you become what do they say? You're the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so if you're the one delivering the foreman training and the owner and his or her foreman are sitting there, they're like, what's this Rick saying about change in the way we manufacture. This is crazy. Well, and then you have a coffee and you're like, well, what if he's right? You open up the discussion.
Well, it's all about communication and trust and being transparent, and and there's nothing you can have respectful arguments, and then the proof is always in the pudding. You say, well, okay, if we keep doing it this way, this is what's costing us.
Yeah.
But if we make a change, and even if we only grabbed 50% of that improvement,
well, it's still 100 hours on one station. Just assembly.
I'm not saying you're going to save all this time. But I'm going to say, even if you say 50% of that I want to grab, then let's do that, right? The other big thing that I picked up off here, I hope we have a bit more time here, just one big takeaway still that I want to share with everyone is that I saw a lot of trimming going on parts that were already cut.
Like edge band trim?
Guys would bring a panel for one of the panel doors, bring a bunch of panels over and they trim it shorter. Or the finished door itself, they had to trim it. And, in today's day and age, we have the software, right? We've got this, everybody's got software now. We've got CNC routers, we've got precision, to the half of the 16th of an inch or a quarter of a millimeter. I mean, they cut precise.
They're precision machines, yeah.
So if you're cutting stuff, and I scratch my head and say, why are we bringing components that have already been sized and we're cutting the second time and the third time sometimes? I said, there's something wrong with your software. Then you need to change the parameters, the clearances.
Well, I think we have to ask the question, is that an engineering thing? Is that a manufacturing thing? Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got guys that are running over to the jointer or to the saw and trimming stuff off that has already been put together or cut already prior to being put together, and they're trimming it again. And so they fix it. They make it right.
Yeah.
But again, it's non-value added. If I cut it once, that's it. If I cut it the second time, the third and fourth time, customer's not willing to pay for that. But the owner has to pay the worker to do it, has to pay the maintenance on the equipment to change the blades and make them sharp, change the electricity to run the dust collection system and to run the motors to do that trimming. Hey, you got to pay for that. But
all of that
you can't charge the customer.
All that technical stuff, Rick, is but the owner's frustrated watching this because the owners know they're usually technically minded. Why are we retouching that piece of wood?
Yeah. And this is what the owner said to me when he took this video. He said, I looked at that video and I was embarrassed to send it in to you, but I knew you had to have it.
And he's a wise gentleman. He's a wise and noble guy. So he would have looked at that with some perspective. Yeah. So he made some changes. But see, what's happened is we need the right culture on the floor with the supervisors. When something like that happens, they have to look for the root cause. They have to ask, why are we doing that? A lot of times a defect happens or there's rework. We just throw guys at it, get it fixed, get it on the truck, get it out to the customer. We fix it. We do a great job on that. But we don't say why. Why did that happen? Because chances are it's going to happen next week or next month again. And if it happens once a month or twice a month, that's 24 times a month. And how much money is being spent on you redoing that so many times when you could have asked why, ask again why, 5 times to get to the root cause. The root cause analysis.
Now, let's fix this in our process. Let's change the cutting list so that the software spits out the correct parts to allow for the correct clearances so that guys on the floor don't have to trim it again.
And Rick, what you just talked about there, that root cause analysis, that looking at the reason why, is exactly the purpose of this show and actually everything that you and I do. This is about the business of the construction business. You just happen to be a business person who runs a cabinet shop. It's not about being the greatest on the tools. At some point as the owner, you don't even want to be great at the tools anymore. You want to be great at understanding how the tools and the people work together to create beautiful products that people will pay a premium for. So good. Wow, that's a lot of takeaways. And you were able to take that kind of information. I mean, this gentleman invested in the course, got his foreman in there. The foreman's a great guy. They recognize these things. But that was a 17-minute video.
That was 17 minutes one video. Station. That was like, for me, I picked a lot of stuff off of there and I shared it with the owner, and he's since had some meetings with his folks and is trying to streamline some of those things now. They definitely want to look at mounting the hardware on the flat panels. There was no resistance from the owner on it. Now, I don't know what kind of resistance he's going to get from his foreman and supervisor and so on. But you know what? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
it's got to change.
If I'm a worker and I start at a company, and from day one, Rick, we mount all our hardware on the flat components. Well, that's not how I did it in the last place I worked at, ABC Company. I says, wait, yeah, but Rick, you're not at ABC anymore. You're here. So now from here on in, this is how we do it here. You can take that same approach and say, hey, we're wiping the slate clean. From today on, we're going to mount our hardware in the flat. And this is how, and we're going to set the process up, and we're going to train you folks. And we want your feedback on what works, what doesn't work, but there's no going back. This is the way we're going to do it. It has to be mounted on the flat simply because that's the way it has to be done from here.
We've got a few more minutes here, Rick. That little training piece that you just did there, thanks for that. But let's get that to the meeting. Let's go back and redo that piece as if you were going to introduce this new procedure, this new process to the floor. Just for the listeners, can you tell us how you would do that? How you would set up the meeting, verbally, what you would physically do? Because I want people to leave this episode going, okay, now I know what to do. Now I've got some answers. Can you take us through that as a foreman, what you would do?
Well, if I was the foreman, I would know who my guys are who are quite resistant to, any sort of change, and they just want to do it their own way. I know those folks. Mm-hmm. And if they're good workers, great. I give them something, then that's fine. But I don't want to focus too much on that crowd. You've got one or two or three key people who understand that, geez, if you can make my job easier, Rick, I'm going to listen. But I want some input into that too, because I'm the guy doing the work, right? So I would engage with those folks who are, more open-minded and say, look, guys, we've got to do it different. This is not working. It's causing a lot of grief. You've mounted slides when they're up on inside a cabinet, and you're going to reach in. Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you could mount it flat? So, yeah, of course. So let's set something up. What do we need to do? And I would ask a lot of questions. Where would we do it? I might know where it has to be done. I want them to tell me.
But you want to ask the questions and get the
I want to ask them because
right.
You know why? I want to create buy-in. Because if I come there and tell them, this is how we're doing it from here on in, and this is where you're going to do it. This is how I want you to do it.
Yeah.
And I walk away and they say, he doesn't even mount slides. He's never mounted a slide.
He's never mounted a slide in his life.
When I've been worked here for 10 years, I've never seen him pick up a drill. Now, that wouldn't be me, but...
No, I hear you. But that's
I put myself in that position and say, look, I want you to tell me what's going to work for you. Well, I think if we do it like this, well, okay, let's try it. It might not work.
So you'd set up a station right there. Let's try it.
Try it.
Yeah.
And let's see what we need to change. It's not going to be perfect, right? But let's try it and let's refine the process until we get really good at it. And I would take those.
Do a demo. You would do a demo, like a head-to-head competition. Assemble slides on an assembled cabinet, slides on a flat.
Well, it would be a pilot project in one area of the plant. I might only do one job, and let's try it. And then and we get those people who are keen to get them doing. And when they've bought into it and they've helped create that process, when they sit down with the guys at smoke break
in the lunchroom,
they're going to start talking to them and say, you know what? This makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's a hell of a lot easier to do it, this way. And, we set it up. Rick gave us sort of the carte blanche. He said, look, tell me what you need, run it by me, and I'll support you on this stuff. And let's see if we can make this happen, right? You're going to get a better chance of buy-in.
Yeah.
And then those folks who are resistant, well, I don't have to try and convert them. My keeners guys are going to do that, right? So... it's the soldiers, the foot soldiers are going to do it, right? Yeah. So, but again, you have to be a leader, you have to be a mentor, a coach, you have to kind of get it out of them, get the buy-in, get them excited about it and get them solving the issue, because it's what's in it for them. That, if it's just simply, if I come there and say, look, the company's going to make more money, company's going to make more profit if we install all the slides in the flat. Do you think I'm going to get buy-in?
Yeah. How about we saved your wrists? How about it's an easier job.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've learned to respect a lot is that when we talk about continuous improvement, it's not getting people to work harder. It's getting them to work smarter. And I know you said that already, but we're not trying to get our guys sweating. We're not trying to whip our people. That's nothing to do with this. It's about having the flow really smooth and consistent. As I said, it never looks like work is getting done. What's the saying, Rick, from continuous improvement? It should look like a slow rope being pulled. Pulling a slow rope.
It certainly has to be organized, and there has to be clear communication and respect, but it certainly doesn't have to be chaotic. It doesn't have to be, people are running around.
Like Charlie's Chocolate Factory. That's not what we're looking for here.
No, we're not looking for that.
Well, let's wrap it up, Rick. Take us out with some final concluding thoughts on the observations you made. I mean, you've already told us the dollar impact just on that station, 200 hours.
Right.
I'll let you close us out here.
Well, I think, from what I saw, there was certainly a lot of opportunity for the folks to work smarter, not work any faster, but get more productivity and get things flowing a lot quicker off the workbenches. I mean, the other thing that I saw was, guys looking for tape measures, not having the tape measure on the apron.
We've talked about that before. That's crazy.
So the one chap he needed a tape measure, and he had to walk like 10 steps to the other end of his workbench first to find it, and then grab it and then measure something. And then he set it down somewhere else. So when he needed it the next time, well, it's going to be in a different area. So he's going to have to look at it again. So it's all these little things they'll add up over the course of a year. Right. And I mean, your guys are going to do less walking. If you can move processes closer together, organize the parts and the supplies, for them, and support them in that, they're going to do less walking, and they're going to have more energy at the end of the day. Instead of walking, 2 miles or 3 miles, if you added up all their paces, maybe they're only walking, half a mile.
Unless they're trying to get their steps in. But
there's all kinds of bonuses to doing these things, right? So that's why I like to look at that. The other, safety is another thing, right? If I'm tired, at the end of closer to the end of the day, because I've done a lot of walking, then I could hurt myself or hurt, one of the other coworkers.
Right.
Or
more movement.
I can damage a piece of equipment, because that's also a safety issue, or a damaged product. Right. So again, the safety enters into it, right? Quality enters into it, because then we can make a quality product, because we're not damaging things, right? We're building quality in at every process step. I mean, one of the folks was stepping over the air hose all the time. He's got a pneumatic sander. He's got air hose clumped in front of between his bench and his work table, and he's got to step over it all the time. And I say, well, can we not put an overhead retractable, air hose up there, or one of those coiled ones, so that it, and hang the
automatically
product up high, so that the air hoses aren't on the floor. So, it's safety enters into it as well, right? So takeaways for me are always about, improving the quality, keeping everybody and everything safe, maintaining the production flow to support your sales. Because if you want to increase sales, you've got to increase production. And the only way to do that efficiently is to cut out the wastes. You can do it inefficiently by hiring a second crew. But if you've got waste on the first crew, you're going to duplicate the waste in the second crew. So you're just paying, you're just changing 4 quarters into $1. Right? You're not making any money.
You're breaking rocks in the hot sun.
You're making more money, but you've got more expenses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Rick, incredible. Thank you. And this is all of the takeaway from one little piece of the training, the Foreman 101 training. Actually, I think we call it Foreman/Supervisor 101 training, because
I mean, I really like to focus on the leadership part, because
it's leadership development for your
leadership
foreman.
And mentoring. And so when you're a leader and mentor, you have a really important responsibility to the folks, because, now you're leading and mentoring and coaching them. Much like, if the folks that are listening, they've got kids that are in gymnastics or swimming or soccer or hockey, they want to have a good coach. If they've got a terrible coach, the kids aren't going to be passionate about playing that sport. They're going to be disappointed. They don't want to go. A great coach always builds the passion level up for the kids. So we want to do the same idea of if you're a leader, if you're a supervisor, we want you to instill passion, right? We want you to be a great leader, a mentor, and that means training folks, not just new people, but existing employees. Because remember, processes change, materials change over time, customers change. You're making different products. You always have to train for those new things that are happening, right? You're not doing things the same way as you were doing them 5 years ago. At least I hope that's not what's happening, because you're not improving them.
Unless you're trying to run out the clock. But those people probably don't listen to the podcast or join us for the training.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Ric, thank you so much for joining us. Always such a wealth of knowledge in the industry. And I appreciate the passion you bring to continuous improvement. And I mean, there's a lot I liked about today, but breaking it down into, I mean, you took it so far as to go downstairs in your own shop and time slides. I mean, you literally created an efficiency lab and then did the math to say, well, let's say we're roughly right. It takes you 250 hours to do it your way. I think 56 hours is what you could get it down to. But then you also knocked your own number down and said, what if it was 100 hours? Well, you're still saving 150 hours.
Well, and even if you say, look, we can only make a 50% improvement on that, you're still making an improvement.
You're still making an improvement. And that's one station.
And then don't forget, it's about continuous improvement. So you say, let's raise the bar and let's get it up to that level. Then let's refine the process even more if we feel that we can make some more gains, or go to some other areas of your plant and pick the lowest hanging fruit from there and say, let's drive some of these wastes out of this area so we can have a balanced, workflow throughout the production facility.
If anybody wants to talk to Ric on the side, you're on Contractor Strategy Group, right? So you're in there chatting with people and answering questions. People who haven't joined the Contractor Strategy Group, it's just for the owners of construction and contracting companies. There's obviously lots of cabinet makers in there. So if you have a question, you could ping Ric there. But Ric, you and I have already decided we're running this foreman training sometime in the fall.
Yes.
Sometime in the fall. And I think that's the right pace. We've already got, like I said, one person who's on the wait list, and that we didn't even have a wait list. So now we have a wait list. I'll say this again later in the episode, but if you're listening to this about what Ric's talking about getting buy-in from your foreman, about applying continuous improvement to your shop, at least get on the wait list. Send me a text. Just shoot me a text message. You guys know my cell phone number, 604-837-8361, and just use the keyword foreman. Just say the word foreman to me, and then I'll know, or if I forget, we'll figure it out. But we'll get you on that wait list. At least when you're on the wait list, you'll get first shot. Because how many companies did we have in the last one?
Well, I think there was a wait list of 6 or 8, right? And I think 1 or 2 couldn't join us because I think those when we were still fighting COVID off, and I think they had some issues with some of the folks who were off.
But we limit the class size so that people can talk.
But the class size is like typically there's 6 companies that we're allowing, and 3 per company. So you have up to 18 folks on the training. And
that's about the maximum so that you can, people can field questions, you can answer them, et cetera. Well, Ric, I took a lot of notes.
Well, good.
Gee.
There'll be a test next week when you and I chat that you're going to study.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's an open book test. All right, Ric Ptak, always love having you on. Thanks, man.
Oh, thanks very much. I enjoyed it.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.